Hello and welcome back. My name is Terrlyn. I work here at Citrus County Mosquito Control. And today we are going to be talking all about ticks and how to prevent them in our yards and how to protect ourselves when we're outside exploring the beautiful nature coast, not to pick up ticks along the way. So we are not a tick control entity. We don't do anything with ticks, but I thought it was interesting because ticks also, bite people and spread diseases like mosquitoes. And as we move forward, I know it's only January, but as we move forward in the year, spring, summertime, it's good information to know to kind of prep your house for tick season. So it's going to be a shorter presentation. I normally give about 45 2-hour long presentations. This one might be like 25, 30 minutes. We're just going to talk about the basic biology of ticks, some diseases and risks that they carry with them, prevention for your yard and your house, and then if I was giving this in person or over Zoom, I would have a Q&A session, but obviously we're not going to have that in a recorded presentation. So I'll go ahead and repeat our disclaimer. Ticks are vectors of disease, just like mosquitoes, and that's why I thought they had some relevance on our YouTube channel. But we are not funded to perform any type of tick control. I know up north, where ticks are more prevalent, or like Lyme disease is more prevalent, they do have vector control agencies that are responsible for controlling vectors like mosquitoes and ticks. However, we are just a mosquito control entity. So just had to make that clear, that this webinar is just for your informational purposes. So what are ticks? They're actually small arachnids and they're ectoparasites of people, animals. There's hard and soft varieties, so they look a little bit different. The larval stages have 6 legs and adults have 8. So I'm going to be talking about their life cycle a little bit later in later slides, but they have a very different looking life cycle than mosquitoes or metamorphic insects have, right? So we'll talk about that, but it's important to know that they have these 6 legs as a larva because a lot of people, when they find it on them, they might think it's an insect, because it's only got 6 legs, but it is an arachnid, it's a tick. Even though it has 6 legs, it will eventually have 8. It's not classified as an insect. So, I mean, if you get sick or if you're, going to the doctor or you're trying to identify this pest that's on you, it might be confusing. So ticks will actively quest, meaning they're searching around looking for things to bite, for living things to hitch a ride on. So people will commonly pick them up, animals will commonly pick them up in areas with dense vegetation, such as a trail or a park, or a natural area. The ticks are out questing, and then as you're walking by, your pant legs pick them up, or dogs, if they're lower to the ground, their legs can pick them up, or the body of the dog itself, if they're a smaller dog. Can rub along that grass and pick up ticks. But you can even get them in your own backyard, so we'll talk about how to tick-proof your home later, but you can even get them by hanging out outside, or your animals could pick them up by going to the bathroom outside in your yard or playing outside in your yard. So wood piles and leaf litter can all be attractants for these ticks. Those can be areas where they live. And they can detect you using the CO2 kind of like mosquitoes can. That's how they sense. And they're vectors of disease as well. So there's going to be some that we're going to talk about later, but the big one that people think about when they think of ticks is Lyme disease. So here's a picture of an adult tick, what they look like crawling on somebody's skin. So that can be pretty terrifying. They actually don't have eyes, so they detect their hosts by questing using their sensory organs to detect CO2, heat, and even vibration. So they're not going to see you by sight, but they've got very specialized other senses that they can use to detect your presence. They actually don't even have a head. So a lot of times you might see people online saying like, oh, make sure you get the head out. When you're picking a tick off your body, make sure you get the head out. But they actually don't have a head. They only have mouth parts that are called chelicera, and they cut into the skin. And then a tube is inserted, kind of like a mosquito, to drink your blood. So that's just an interesting fact. But both sexes blood feed. So different from mosquitoes, where only the females blood feed, the males and the females both blood feed in ticks. And then they become engorged after feeding. They will fall off and then they will molt to their next life stage. Or if they're females, they'll go ahead and maybe they'll lay a batch of eggs. It just depends what they're trying to do. So here is what their life cycle looks like. It's a little confusing, but this was probably one of the most basic ones that I could find. So around the summertime, they are eggs, and then in the autumn they might hatch out as larvae, and in the winter they're in that nymphal stage, and then they will transform again in the spring to the adult stage. So they're not really transforming like mosquitoes do from larvae to adult mosquitoes. They progressively, after they hatch out of the egg, they just molt and get progressively larger. They have 8 legs instead of 6, going from their larvae to their nymph stage. But they kind of just get progressively bigger. And they do have to molt to be able to do that, but they're not going from a completely different type of looking life stage in their larval form versus their adult form. They kind of just look like small ticks when they're larvae. Oop. So here's another one of those life stages. Depending on the tick, it could be a 1 or 2 year life stage. Every time they blood feed, they are able to be infective with some sort of pathogen. So here's just an example of that. This is Ixodes scapularis. And they commonly carry Lyme disease. Okay, so moving on to tick identification. So over here on the right, there's like a diagram of different ones. At the top here, I can't see because of my Oh, here we go. Okay, so this is the black-legged tick, Ixodes scapularis, the female, the male, what they look like as nymphs, and then what they look like as larvae. And you can look up this diagram too on Google. This is the Lone Star tick, Amblyomma americanum. So this one is very common here in Citrus County. Like literally all the ticks that I've found on myself, I think have been Lone Star ticks. The females have this white dot in the center of their bodies. So it's really easy to tell that they're a Lone Star tick. Again, if you get sick, if you get a rash, if you are concerned about, getting a tick on you and you're able to identify it, then it makes things a lot easier for a healthcare professional to understand what's going on. And this is what the male nymph larva looks like. And then the dog tick, Dermacentor variabilis, that's what they look like. And then here it is in comparison to a dime. So they're very, very small creatures, especially when they're larvae and nymphs. You might not even notice them when they're on your body just because they're so small. But each species has their own different coloring and patterns on their bodies. But just the fact, even if you can't tell, like, oh, this is a dog tick, this is a Lone Star tick, but if you can at least tell that you have a tick on you or your animal, then that can help to point people in the right direction of what's going on. There's a lot of different conflicting resources though, especially if you're not like a tick identifying person, like in your role as your career. I mean, if this is not something that you are commonly versed in, it can be very confusing to try to look up pictures of them. So just be careful with that when you're trying to look up resources like that. So again, each stage does feed on a host, and they can be birds, they can be other animals, deer, smaller animals as well, or humans. So here are some examples of where ticks live. So backyards, trails. We went on a hike over the summer and for like a program with children. It was a summer camp, and I came back to work and I actually had a tick just crawling on my arm. So we were on a trail, we were doing a hike, and I just picked it up somehow. I didn't feel like I was off in the grass. I feel like I stuck to the trail. I don't remember ever veering off the path. So they're even present on paved trails or dirt trails. Um, Here out back in our office, we have our beehives in the back of our property, and just walking out there where there's grass and trees, I picked up a tick, a Lone Star tick actually out there one time. It was crawling on my legs, so they're pretty abundant over the spring and summertime. But open areas, grassy areas, anywhere where there's like leaf litter, like vegetation, leaf vegetation, pine needles, you can pick up these hitchhikers pretty much anytime you're outside. So now that you know where commonly tick exposure happens, we could kind of talk about tick-borne diseases. They can vector bacteria, viruses, protozoa. The most famous that you've probably heard about is Lyme disease, but there's also anaplasmosis or lichiosis, Rocky Mountain spotted fever. Some common symptoms of that are fever, chills, aches, rash, kind of like a mosquito-borne disease. They all pretty much have common symptoms. But another thing that ticks have become famous for the past few years is the red meat allergy that they can trigger in humans called alpha-gal syndrome. And I'm not the best person to talk to about all of these diseases, so I will leave some CDC resources down below that you can check out after the video that can give you some more information about those. So some common ticks that you could see around Citrus County are the American dog tick. This is Dermacentor variabilis, and this is a picture of what they look like down here at the bottom right, and I got this from the CDC. They have some great distribution maps as well of where these ticks are present throughout the state of Florida. And they also have distribution maps for disease cases as well. So here we are in Citrus County right here, and Dermacentor variabilis is considered established here. Okay, so moving on to the deer tick or the black-legged tick, these are called, their scientific name is Ixodes scapularis. Here's what they look like down here at the right. Um, Again, here's that distribution map. So the county, Citrus County, is in red, and they meet the criteria for established populations of Ixodes scapularis. So they are pretty abundant all throughout Florida. And then the Lone Star tick, Amblyomma americanum, and there they are there's the female with that lone white dot on her back. So the CDC has some great maps, and I'll link those down below as well, so you can check them out, interact with their program. I believe they went through and they are going to be updating, or they have already updated a lot of these maps to reflect more current information. But these are reported cases of selected tick-borne diseases. So they've got Rocky Mountain spotted fever on here, Ehrlichia or lichiosis, and they've got several different strains there. So they're present in Florida. It You might hear that Lyme disease is not in Florida, or like, if you get bit by a tick, it's not a problem here in Florida, but that's just false. They are definitely present here in Florida. Maybe not in the abundance as they are over here in New England, and the north part of our country, but they are present. And here in Citrus County, I've singled it out on this map here, and there was 11 cases of Lyme disease between 2019 and 2022. So is that a lot? No, definitely not. But it's present, it's here. So it does happen. So, some ways that you can protect yourself going forward now that you have that information, dress appropriately. If you're going to be going outside, if you're going to be walking our local trails, wear long sleeves, long pants, tuck your pants actually into your socks. That way, there's no skin for the ticks to crawl on, attach to. Keep your hair tied back, especially if you have long hair. It's easy for them to like. I've had ticks in my hair before. It's easy to climb on our strands of hair and crawl up to your head. So keep your hair tied back, wear closed-toed shoes. And this is just great tips for walking our trails anyway, because you could come into contact with wildlife or other bugs. Um, but definitely you want to protect yourself from ticks. As far as repellent goes, DEET is recommended for your skin, permethrin for your clothing. You don't want to spend too long in tick infested areas. You want to stick to the mowed trails. And stay on the path where there's the least amount of vegetation that you're going to be coming into contact with. And then always just perform a tick check when you get home. I've had ticks stay on my body through changing my clothes, showering, and they've still stayed on my body. I don't know how. So just make sure that you are doing those tick checks. Even if you think, oh, I took a shower, I changed my clothes, I'm good, you might not be. Okay, and now that we know, how to protect ourselves and what we need to wear, how do we protect our pets who are outside, right? You're out walking your dogs on these trails. Get them on some sort of tick preventative. That's something that you'll want to talk to your vet about. They have different collars, oral medications. They even have topical medications that are available. So again, not an authority on that, so talk with your vet. Um, Perform regular tick checks on them too, give them regular baths, keep them groomed, keep their hair short. That way, there's less stuff for the ticks to grab onto. Um, but when you're done on your walk or your trail, just do a tick check on them as well. Ticks like folds in warm areas. Same goes for humans. So those are the primary areas that you'll want to check during your tick checks. And then keep pets out of brush and dense vegetation. I mean, again, you want to do that anyway because, snakes and other things can hang out in the brush. So we just want to protect our pets from those. And then there is a specific routine and way that you're supposed to remove a tick. You want to find them and remove them as soon as possible. So if they have attached, usually, I mean, this could change depending on the species or the type of pathogen that they are transmitting, but typically they need about 24 to 48 hours, specifically for Lyme disease to transmit that. Um, they need 24 to 48 hours of feeding. So as long as you catch it within a day or two, you're going to be okay. But you want to use some sort of fine tip tweezers, and they sell these too, specific tick removal tools or tweezers. So you could probably find those on Amazon. I don't think they're very expensive. But you want to use those, that way you can get those chelicera or those mouth parts out of your skin. You don't want to leave any parts of the tick behind because that can irritate your skin. Just it could cause a welt and yeah, not good. So you want to get all of that out. So you want to pull slow and steady, and you want to grasp close to the skin to remove that head or chelicera, just to make sure that they're fully out of your body. Clean with alcohol or soapy water, just to kind of get any bacteria or anything out of it, because then it is open wound, I guess, in contact with your skin. So you want to clean that. And then monitor for any signs or rashes that develop in subsequent days. So this is a YouTube video that goes specifically into that process. I'm not going to play it, but I will link it down below. That way you can check it out afterwards. And they go through the technique on how to properly remove a tick. Okay, so moving on to tick proofing your yard, you want to keep your grass short. So, they hang out in those long blades of grasses and the leaf litters. So you want to clear any brush away from your home, away from where you're going to be hanging out outside, in a patio or play area. Um, You want to keep those areas specifically too away from tree lines. So instead, install those in sunny areas in the middle of your yard or closer to your house, and away from the tree lines. You want to reduce the habitat for wildlife because wildlife brings in ticks as well. So if deer or other wildlife are walking through your yard, they could bring in ticks that are hitching a ride on them and drop them in your yard. You want to prune any dense shrubs, again, just to keep the area clear from anywhere that the ticks might want to hang out. And then get your animals on preventatives. You know, even if you don't go outside often and walk trails and nature, you're not a nature person, just outside in your yard, your animals can pick them up. So it's important to get them on preventatives, even if that's not something that you actively do. You know, you don't have to be an explorer to get a tick. There are several tick control treatments or options out there. There's both synthetic and natural options, but do your own research and make sure that you're only applying something that's EPA approved. You want to read the label and follow all of the personal protective equipment that they recommend on that label. I know certain pest control businesses will provide tick control treatments and services, so that's just something to look into on your own if that is something that you're interested in. And with that, I thank you. I told you it was going to be a short and sweet presentation, just an introduction to ticks and how to protect yourself from them. So you can follow us on Facebook or Twitter. We don't post too much information on ticks, but you know, on World Tick Day or something, I might share some more information once the season approaches and gets closer, just to help you prepare and keep that front of mind for you. If you have any questions or would like further resources, again, I'm not like a tech expert or anything, but I could certainly connect you with someone, or point you to the right resources to check out for yourself. And here's our website as well. If you're interested in more information about mosquitoes or what we do here at Mosquito Control, you can check us out at citrusmosquito.org. And that was my last slide. So thank you for hanging out with us today, and like and subscribe so you can be notified when we post another video here on our YouTube. All right, thanks. See you next time.